Happy Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm going to read the two shared readings. On your outline that you got, I'm going to blow this up. It said for Wednesday shared reading, you were supposed to read a bit about buttons and answer questions 1 and 2, and then Thursday read bread baking, and then Friday read them both. However, it says Tuesday or Wednesday read a bit about buttons and answer questions 1 and 2, but 1 and 2 is about bread baking. So I'm going to read you both selections, and then both based on both of those, and you're going to answer questions 1 and 2 on Wednesday, 3 and 4 on Thursday, 5 and 6 on Friday, all with the same two shared readings. Okay, so no big deal. They made an error. Everybody makes mistakes. Doesn't matter. That's why you need to watch these. So I've got my article, A Bit About Buttons. So if you want to grab yours, I'm going to read both A Bit About Buttons and bread baking. Okay? A bit about buttons. Buttons seem to be everywhere. On our shirts, the remote control, our jackets, and our phones. Okay, not so many on the phones anymore. They used to be on our phones. Now we just have screens. They can be round or square or spider shaped, made of wood or plastic, have stickers on them or numbers. But we can see them wherever we look. Where'd they come from? What were they first made for? Push and fasten. The English word button comes from the French verb bouter, which means to push. But before buttons got their English name, they were used mostly as decoration on clothes and jewelry. The earliest buttons were made of animal bones, horns, and skin. The first time a button was actually pushed through a buttonhole was in the 13th century. Now, the most common use of buttons is as fasteners in clothing. They hold two pieces of fabric together, like if you have buttons on your jeans or your shirt. Buttons from many ancient civilizations have been found. Some of them were found by archaeologists who studied the people of the past by recovering the things they left behind. The Indus Valley people used buttons, as did the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Chinese. Useless. Even the simplest things had a glorious pointlessness to them. When buttons came in, people couldn't get enough of them and arrayed them in decorative profusion on the backs and collars and sleeves of coats. They put them everywhere, as that means. They didn't actually do anything. One relic of this is the short row of pointless buttons that are still placed on the underside of jacket sleeves near the cuff. These have been purely decorative and have never had a purpose. If you've ever owned a sweater that maybe had a button here, or if you had like a pea coat, sometimes there's a second row, okay? On your shirt, sometimes there's just buttons on the back. Nothing on mine right now, but if you've ever noticed or not, pay attention to, and maybe you'll be like, oh, that does make sense. These are pointless, okay? Bill Bryson, historian and writer of At Home, A Short History of Private Life. Buttons aren't exactly pointless. Even in some cases, they just serve a decorative purpose. Do this quick exercise. Count the number of buttons on a man's suit jacket, front pockets, sleeves, and the rest of the jacket. They were placed there not because of their functionality, but because someone, centuries ago, thought they looked good. Hundreds of years later, they are still with us. Pearly King of Somerstown. Our friend Bryson might not think too highly of buttons, but some people have taken them very seriously. One such man was a street sweeper in London called Henry Croft. He would wear suits with thousands of white pearly buttons to attract attention towards the cause of local hospitals. He started a tradition of men and women wearing suits and dresses decorated with mother of pearl buttons. These people became known as pearly kings and queens. Even today, pearly kings and queens continue to wear pearly clothing and collect funds for charity. Fun facts about buttons. Did you know that the word button is a relative of the word to butt, which also means to push? Button collecting is a very popular hobby. The National Button Society was formed in 1939 in Chicago. There are also many local button clubs all over the United States. Till the 18th century, buttons were very expensive. Only the rich could wear them, and they were a status symbol. It's like a higher status. So the more buttons you had, it seemed to be like that you were at a higher status, or that if you worn so. Special metal buttons were used to hide compasses during the World Wars. The Waterbury Button Museum in Waterbury, Connecticut, and the Button Room in Gurnee, Illinois, have large collections of buttons. The Button Room was an actual room in Elizabeth Hewitt's house in Gurnee, where she loved telling stories about the collection of buttons. Okay. So to go with that one would actually be questions 3 and 4, which they had for Wednesday. So those questions would be, what does this article tell readers a bit about? What's it tell readers about? That's simple. Question 4. This article is divided into different sections. One section is called Push and Fasten. The next section is called Useless. Does the topic of the article change between these two sections? Push and Fasten, what was that about? What was the next part, Useless? Does that content, is it the same? Or are they two different things? That's what you're going to talk about, okay? Now I'm going to go read Bread Baking Now and Then, okay? You want to grab that one too. Did you know that bread is one of the earliest human inventions? Bread is a food made of flour and water. Other ingredients and shape can vary. Scientists have learned that humans have been eating bread in some form or another for 30,000 years. Ancient Egyptians ate a lot of bread. In fact, because they had no potatoes or rice, bread was the most important carbohydrate source in the ancient Egyptians' diet. Egypt gets little rain. Ancient Egyptian farmers relied on the annual flooding of the Nile River to irrigate their fields. Egyptian farmers paid a portion of their grain harvest to the Egyptian treasury. Archaeologists have discovered illustrations of bakeries and loaves of bread in ancient Egyptian burial sites. Professional bakers and home bakers use the same production techniques. Home bakers, usually women, baked only the bread they would need for that day. Egyptians used a grain from the emmer wheat for their bread. The grain was ground by hand on a millstone, like where they would take something and they grind it down. The process cracked and crushed the grain into coarse flour. The flour was mixed with water and sometimes a little old dough. It was placed in a pot and baked in a clay oven. The Egyptian bread was a flatbread. Indian naan and Middle Eastern pita are two examples of flatbreads eaten today. At the end of the ancient Egyptian period, however, around 300 BC, Egyptian bakers added to their bread an important ingredient, yeast. Yeast is a microscopic fungus and it makes bread rise. Today, bread production is more complicated. Yes, you can still bake your own bread at home with store-bought flour and yeast. You can also buy bread made at small bakeries. But the fluffy bread you see in grocery stores in the United States today is made in large commercial facilities. These commercial facilities, or plants like a building, not a plant, like a vegetable plant, have businesses contracts to bake many different bread brands. Most breads today are made using 4 basic ingredients: flour, yeast, salt, and water. Farmers across the United States grow wheat in large quantities. Half of the wheat produced is used in the United States. The other half is exported to other countries. Grain is processed into flour by companies which then sell the flour to commercial bakeries. These bakeries produce the dough and bake the bread, then package it and arrange it for its distribution to stores. The question for these two is 1 and 2. The article discusses this is question 1. The article discusses bread production in 2 different time periods. The first is in the time of the ancient. What is the second time period they discussed in this exact article? Go back and just write it down. Question 2. Does this topic of the article change between the 6th paragraph and the 7th paragraph? Support your answer. Just like we did with yesterday's. Does it change? Go back to the 6th paragraph. It's not labeled. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 6 and 7. Where it says the Egyptian. 6 and 7. Okay, does that topic change? And support it with evidence. Okay? Now, for Friday, reread both these articles, so play this video again, and your questions are 5 and 6. What is different about how the information in each of these articles is organized? Okay, what is different? Okay, bread, it's just one long thing, whereas the buttons, there's certain things that break it apart. That's a difference. Okay, and then now question 6, is one article more clearly organized than the other? Support your answer with evidence. Okay, those are your shared readings for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. A bit about buttons and bread making now and then. Okay, and then you just have your non-literal and literal things to do and your making words. Okay, have a good week. Bye.